Hello and welcome back to Dicebreaker, where today we played Kapow, which is a two-player dice drafting and building game in which two players are going to be fighting against each other as the superhero and supervillain of a comic book conflict. So we played a couple of games of this, and it's pretty fun, but also we're a little bit on the fence about it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I really like it. I've yet to win. But it's great. I've enjoyed it, but haven't quite figured it out.
It's got a satisfying loop to it, where it's like, because you start basically, so everyone has like a character card. This is what you're going to be looking at for the most of the game, right? So you've got three sort of different sort of modes of using your dice. You've got your attack, which does damage, block, which defends, and then power up makes you better, right? So you're literally sort of like building up your power so that you can do one big final smash or whatever. And then each character has their own special list of abilities and the sort of dice pool that they start with. So if I was playing this guy called Spoiler Alert, then I'd grab 2 yellow dice, a purple die, and a blue die. And then I'd also get a custom die that starts with one of these wild tokens on it. So these normal coloured dice are trait dice, and they're pretty standard. You can see their sort of lineup of abilities here. So a blue die is going to get you blue tokens, a red die is going to get you red tokens, and so on. But most of the time, they're sort of pre-set up for you to get like a decent roll each time. So apart from one blank face, you're going to get most of the stuff that you want from them. Whereas these custom ones, they start really, really bad.
Yeah.
Because they've only got one good face on them, and most of the time you're going to be rolling terrible. But then as the game goes on, you can actually get these little faces and start building them up into sort of custom selection. So if you're really into purple and red, for example, you could just keep collecting those. And that, I thought, when we first started the game, I thought that would be more of an interesting concept than it is.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because I think that as time goes on, you start to realise that you should just get as many of these as possible.
Yeah.
Although there is a finite supply of them.
There is, and I think that's something that we found, particularly in our last game, when I was like, right, I'm going to get some more dice. And I looked into the bag. And
I'd already hoovered them
You'd taken all of the ones I wanted. And I was like, okay, well, that was a waste. Also, like, when we played it earlier today, actually, I had one of these, and it was all wild faces. And essentially, you can use wilds as anything, so they're really strong. And so that meant that this die was, like, incredibly powerful. It meant I could use it every single time as whatever I wanted. So I do think there's a benefit to it, but it does take a bit more to kind of build it up.
I think the reason I see them as sort of less, I guess, like competitive as the others is because with these dice, like you grab it and then that's just set for life. Like you're always going to get something useful out of it. Even these can be used to be placed on your any die spaces, which you can do with the blank faces of a square as well. But with these, when you get them, they are basically useless. And then it takes quite a while to actually build them up. And by the time that's happened, you're kind of reaching the end of the game anyway.
Yeah, the other thing with these, they're called action dice in the game. There is some of the most powerful things you can do in the game. You need the action die to be able to do them. So, for example, if you want to do 5 attack, before you even add any kickers to them, you actually need 2 action die, and in this case, you need them to have the same face. Similarly, for the power-up kind of at the bottom, you need at least 1 action die down there involved, and a lot of the kind of really strong abilities do require an action die, and again, if you can like customize it to what you want, and actually therefore avoid ever getting these blank faces, which are a massive pain in the butt. They are really strong, but yeah, it does take some work. And again, so for example, if we're looking at Spoiler Alert, this villain, he actually requires an action die to do one of his abilities.
More powerful ones, So they do feel like a sort of like a luxury die almost in comparison to the others. So to give you a bit of context to how this game works, right? So you're both going to start with a pool of health, and it will seem pretty simple. So let's say that I start with 25 and you start with 20 or whatever. As time goes on, you're going to be building up these combos of dice to assign them different things. So I've got like a wild here, and I've got a fist, so I could combine those two to get 3 base attack. And then Alex can also defend against me, And then you can sort of combo your attacks as well. So once I've got one base, I can start adding kickers, which add more damage. And then I can start adding multipliers, which are really expensive, but they times your total damage count as well.
This is how you've killed me every time we've played.
So as you tend to get more dice, you can afford the more expensive actions. So if you manage to get this base attack of 3, and then you add on a modifier of +2, gives you 5, and then you add on the clobber, which is like the strongest one. So then you've got 9 attack, which is ×2, which is 18, which is almost an entire health pool.
Yeah.
So you're building up into this. It feels less like a comic book and more like Dragon Ball Z or something, where they're just sort of charging up for about 20 hours, and then they do one punch and the show's over.
One punch.
And it's just like, yeah, I think it's got a nice pace to it, and it can go really quick. Like you can get through a game pretty rapidly. Because you never have like a million different options to pick from. You're always sort of like guided based on the results of the dice.
Yeah, I mean, I've played this game a few times, and the first couple of times I played it was actually without this edition. So you can actually play without being like a particular superhero or supervillain. You can just play with the base game, which is kind of how I learned it, and it was probably the best way to do it, because otherwise there's just like so much extra information to gather at the beginning. Now with the superheroes and supervillains, I think between the two of us, we've played all of them at this point, and I've played maybe 1 or 2 of them even twice at this point. But I do wonder how balanced they are, because I find that some of them are quite strong. Like, I mean, this guy can do something that's quite good. Like, he can use a blank face and turn it into one of the muscle arm things, and that requires no dice. Whereas I was playing with one earlier, and she had like no abilities that required no dice, and that was a bit like, okay, well, and I needed a very particular die as well, and it was just, I'm just not sure about how the combinations of those work and if they actually work that well together.
I think part of that as well is that they don't feel tremendously different.
No.
Like you get like a couple of flavorful bits. Like for example, so you've got like this sort of vampire character as one of the villains, and she can do like a sort of leech where you can gain the health that you just took off of your rival as health for you, sort of like leeching the strength out of them. But because you require so many dice to do all these big attacks, the only time where it would ever be worth it is when you've spent loads of dice doing an attack, which means that you never have any left over. So it often feels like you're sort of missing out on some of the better portions of the fight, because by the time that you actually get to a level where you can actually start doing these things, you're so low on health that the game sort of ended already.
Yeah.
So I never found that the sort of like special abilities of a lot of these characters really came into play all that much.
No, particularly the kind of the 4th tier one, if you will. Like the first, I think maybe, especially the first one, because a lot of them will have that no dice thing. The top kind of 2 or 3, I think, came in a few times when we used it, but that bottom one, I don't think I ever used on any of the ones I played, because they either require too many dice or too particular dice, or as you say, it's very specific.
Because like, especially like Vitamin D, this is a very powerful action, right? This is choose an ability that costs 2 dice or less to gain permanently, which means that you get to use that every single turn for free. So I could pop that on like Grow, for example, and I'd be getting a new dice every single turn for free, which is pretty strong. But to get that, I need to roll an arm, and I have to roll a fist. I can't use a wild dice to get it. And I have to roll one of these dodge symbols, can't use the wild side. And then I have to have a dodge symbol on an action die, which also can't be wild. So that's like an incredibly specific combination of stuff. And then by the time that you're set up in a position where you actually might be able to do that, the game's over.
Game over, yeah.
So why would you be grabbing like the double action cost things in the first place, you know? I feel like it's a fun sort of distraction game. And I do think that, like, we never had a bad time with it, I don't think. Like, we did genuinely enjoy all the rounds that we had. But it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of depth. And I think that if we were to play this, like, 10 times, eventually we'd just be like, right, I've been doing the same thing every single time. Yeah. And I kind of have been. Because I've just been loading up on... Yeah, it's working, so I've been doing it. But you just get loads and loads of trait dice. Yeah. Because they're just more powerful. And then by the time that you get to the end, you've just got so many dice that you just do the biggest attack physically possible and just tank their health down in one hit. Yeah, I kind of started, when the last game we played, I kind of started being like, I should probably start doing that, because I was getting so obsessed with like upgrading the whole time that eventually I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to attack, but
I've got 2 health left. So it was like I'd have to like have like a massive attack. Like I think I was 1 off from killing you in the last game, wasn't I? Or I was like quite close to actually killing you.
Possibly, yeah.
But it just wasn't enough because I left it too late. And it's kind of, I think part of the game is trying to figure out when you stop upgrading and start actually using your upgrades, or and start attacking. And what I like about it is because you're doing all this stuff behind your player board, and you're kind of putting your dice on your board in secret, you're kind of the whole time second guessing what the other person is doing.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite bits of it, I think.
Yeah, because I was doing that a lot today. I was like, okay, well, one of my abilities that my person had was like, I could stop either one of us from gaining trait die. So I was like, well, is he going to get a trait die this round? Like, should I even bother putting a dice on there? Because otherwise it's a waste for me. I'm putting a die on there and you're not even doing that action.
Yeah, so we literally just played a game today where I, once again, hit you with a big smack right at the end, which finished you off. But there was like this part of me where I was like, I've only got like 10 health and you're attacking first. So if I don't kill you with this, and even if you just manage to do enough damage to me before I manage to hit you with this, then I'm done. So there was that element of like, do I sort of sit back a bit on the attack and just try and defend a bit more? So there is that nice sort of like psychoanalytical, trying to like pick the other player's brain and try and work out what they're up to. So yeah, there are like a few nice things like this. I'm not crazy about the art style. I know it's like comic book, which is not.
I think they were trying to go with something, and I'm not sure if it's worked. Like we were talking about the font on like the superhero names, and they're a bit tacky. Like I noticed it especially when we kind of looked at the back of the box, and they were all kind of sat beside each other, and I was thinking like, oh God, like that actually looks quite awful altogether. Yeah. And I do like the art. I do like some of the art. I like the actual heroes and villains themselves, but I do the rule book. When you're looking at the rule book, and they've done it, it's meant to be like you're looking at a comic book when you're looking at the rule book, but actually it just hurts my eyes. Like,
yeah, it's really difficult to read.
I was
flicking through trying to find one rule, and I was like, oh.
I had exactly the same thing. I was like, where's this rule? Oh God, no, I can't. This hurts my eyes too much.
I appreciate the sort of sentiment behind what they're trying to do, but I don't think it's like been executed super well. No. I'm not entirely jazzed about all of the female characters having like incredibly skin tight suits as well, and then just the dudes are just like in suits. Like it's a bit sort of male gazy. But yeah, it's like there's just elements of it that just don't quite work. I think if they were to revisit it, because I'm sure they're planning to do like extra characters and stuff like that, right? Yeah,
so I think as far as I'm aware, it's Teuton Porcupine, I believe, is the company who published it, and it was actually a Kickstarter, which I guess has worked out for them. White Wizard Games, who make my favorite game, Star Realms, have taken it now, and I think they're reprinting it now. I don't know if they're changing any of the design aspects or what the exact story is, but I do believe they're kind of bringing it out and launching it properly again next year as a post-Kickstarter thing. So yeah, I'd be interested to see if they're going to change anything in those terms. But yeah, that's the way it is at the moment.
I think with a few tweaks and maybe a few more sort of specializations in the characters, making them feel a little bit more different, I think this could be a pretty fun game. Yeah,
this is a great 2-player. Like I think for the stuff that's available for 2-player only games, this is quite different, and it is quite fun. And I don't really know any other game that's kind of like 2-player only that has the same kind of feel, and that's what got me really excited about this when I played at Essen.
So I think it's got potential for the future, and if you're super into this kind of like comic booky thing, I think one of my like concerns will be like for the game itself. There's so many like Marvel games and stuff like that. Like, why wouldn't you just grab like a pre-established property that you already read the comic books of, rather than their sort of like not great designed characters?
I guess I'd wonder with that aspect, like in my opinion, when I see stuff like that, like licensed stuff, my first thought is always like, is this actually a decent game, or have they just taken any old thing and like slapped a license on it? Yeah. Whereas with this, because there's no license behind it, I kind of instantly trust it a little bit more, because I think, they haven't done that, so hopefully this is a good game. I don't know, I kind of give it the benefit of the doubt a bit more in that respect.
It certainly feels like it could be sort of like strapped to another theme. Like this could certainly be like I don't know, like a civilization that's building up and they're launching out armies instead of punches or something, you know, or it could be some kind of like I don't know, robot that's like powering up its systems, you know, like it could be mechs fighting or something like that. So it feels like it's got legs. Could be something to look out for in the future. Yes. I don't know. I don't know what the price is. Do you know how?
I actually don't either. I was just thinking that. I don't know.
I wonder how expensive it is, because if it's not super expensive, it might be worth it if you're looking for another 2-player game. And I think it's definitely valid that there's not a wealth of great 2-player games out there. There is a solid selection of them, but it's one of the ones that usually it's an afterthought 2-player rules. And I think this, like, having more games that are built specifically for just 1v1, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there you go. That is Kapow, a comic book inspired buildable dice game by Doug Hetrick, Larry Baguki, and Carl Van Ostrand. If you're interested in this, we'll have some links in the description where you can find a little bit more information on it, maybe the Kickstarter, or have a look. Did you say White Wizard were republishing?
Yeah, I think they're going to have it at PAX Unplugged soon, but I don't know how available it is outside that at the moment. But as I said, I do believe they're like redoing it for next year. So 2020.
2020, there you go. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this and you want to see our opinions on some other games, or you just want to see us play them and look like morons, then all you have to do is jump on over to the subscribe button, which is sitting right at the bottom of the screen right now. There's also a couple of videos that you might want to try out if you're looking for more Dicebreaker content.
Like this one.
Yeah, that one's good, isn't it? Click on the bell icon as well, and you'll have a notification go up every time we upload a video. But more importantly, I just want you to know that we want you to have
a lovely day.